dług za użytkowanie budynku.
The debt for the use of the Russian Consulate General building, located at 15 Batorego Street in Brzeszcz, which belongs to the state treasury, has been reduced from over 5 million zloty to 2 million zloty. However, the Russians have not paid a single zloty. Who wrote off Russia's debt and why? Today, I took a closer look at the situation. 3 million zloty in debt were enough as a gift to Vladimir Putin, just in time for his birthday, which he is celebrating today. And it is in the Tri-City that the spirit of Russian friendship seems to be alive and well, while Russian missiles continue to attack Ukraine. Surprising news is coming out of Poland under Donald Tusk's government. The Russian consulate in Gdańsk has had most of its debt to the Polish state written off. The Russian consul runs away from our camera, but off camera he stubbornly insists that the matter has been settled long ago. The Russians claim that since the Russian consulate building in the center of Gdańsk was destroyed during the war, or perhaps they destroyed it, they are entitled to a building in Brzeszcz. This is a somewhat strange interpretation, because if we look at the history of Gdańsk during World War II, Gdańsk suffered primarily as a result of the actions of the Red Army. It was the Soviets who destroyed Gdańsk and a large part of its buildings and massacred people. The city of Gdańsk is well aware that the Russians have not paid for this property for years, probably since the beginning. The city of Gdańsk manages real estate in the city. It monitors contracts, buildings, and manages debt collection. However, any enforcement of the consulate's debts can only be based on international law, and the president of Gdańsk can only take legally possible actions if they are indicated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Russian consulate does not settle its debts, does not respond to payment requests, and does not respond to debit notes. This building is owned by the state's treasury, is managed by the city of Gdańsk, and the Russians' arguments are not based on facts or law, but only on their manipulation of history. We can see that the Russians, despite receiving some goodwill from the city, which I personally find scandalous, the city should not have covered anything up. In addition, they continue to maintain their narrative of ownership of the building, and just as they did not pay before, they do not intend to pay now, and the city continues to be treated by the Russians as an institution that can be milked for money. Just as the Polish consulate can purchase real estate abroad, which is then managed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Russian diplomatic mission can purchase or rent real estate in Poland. But Russia does not pay Poland. What's more, the Polish-Russian Friendship House, which recently moved from another prestigious location to the Russian consulate building, is still operating in Gdańsk. The Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs is shifting responsibility for debt cancellation to the city. We asked the ministry by who and when this debt was canceled, as well as what steps were taken to collect it. We did not receive a response. Russian diplomats have occupied the premises on Batorego Street since 1951. When they moved in, the buildings had unresolved ownership issues. In the 1970s, the building became the property of the Polish state treasury. This means that rent should be paid to the city for it. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs began issuing bills in 2010. Why was the debt written off now? Unofficially, the changes in the calculation of the debt were made for two reasons: to avoid further aggravating the diplomatic situation between Poland and Russia, but also because of the allegedly unclear status of the villa in Brzeszcz. The facts look very unfavorable. When the Russians claim the right to occupy a Polish building, the authorities simply forgive the debt.
The Tomahawk long-range missile has been making headlines in recent weeks, from Washington all the way to Moscow and Beijing. The request for approval to purchase and deliver these weapons was reportedly made by the Ukrainian president during a meeting with Donald Trump on the sidelines of the recent UN summit. It now appears the decision has been made, although consultations are still needed on how they will be used and their specific targets.
I've sort of made a decision, pretty much, if you consider. I think I want to find out what they're doing with them.
Yes.
Where are they sending them, I guess. I'd have to ask that question. That war should never have started, would have never started. Such bad judgment was used there. I think on both sides, by the way. But nobody looks good with the war with Russia and Ukraine, nobody.
In recent days, the possibility of the Americans agreeing to Ukraine's purchase and use of them has become increasingly real. This was evidenced by the panicked statements of the Kremlin, which made terrifying tirades against the West. Putin himself announced the transfer of the missiles would mean a breakdown in relations between Moscow and Washington. Issues such as discussions on the supply of new weapon systems to Ukraine, including long-range and high-precision systems such as Tomahawks, were raised. I have already said that this will lead to the destruction of our relations, or at least the positive trends that have emerged in them. These positive trends were temporary, at a time when the Americans gave the Russians a chance to end the conflict on quite favorable terms. Now, however, in the phase of continued Russian escalation, it seems that Washington has taken a completely new course. Hence, the already approved decision to provide Ukraine with data on targets located deep inside Russia. This heavily implies the likely transfer of Tomahawks. The Russian Federation's recent actions, such as the violation of NATO airspace by aircraft and drones, are likely the impetus for the United States to share intelligence with Ukraine. Added to this are consultations between leaders. The president of Finland is on his way to Washington and has already announced he will provide the Americans with very specific information on the situation both on the Ukrainian front and on NATO's eastern flank.
My message, and in the conversation that I'll have with President Trump on Thursday, we'll look at a lot of the facts on the ground. And I can also bring messages from my recent visit to Kyiv, where I had a chance to have one-on-one conversations with President Zelensky and also get an extensive security briefing of the situation on the battlefield. Then it is, of course, up to the President of the United States to decide what he does with the information.
European commanders are anxiously following the information gathered by intelligence units. According to German intelligence, there is ongoing discussion in the highest circles of the Russian government about a possible attack on NATO countries. This is followed by reports of the expansion of units near the borders of Finland and the Baltic states.
Kamil Trzaska, Republika.
Abigail Idan was only 4 years old when Hamas terrorists killed her mother and father and kidnapped her and took her to the Gaza Strip. She spent 50 days in Palestinian captivity. Today she is 6 years old and recently started school for the first time, but she can only share her joy with her adoptive parents.
An important event.
On October 7th, exactly 2 years ago, Palestinian terrorists entered Israel via paragliders and rammed the border crossing. They slaughtered men, women, and children. They entered homes and killed all the inhabitants. Mercy was a foreign concept. It was an operation by the Islamist terrorist organization Hamas on a scale that took the Israeli security services and army by surprise. There are estimated to have been 1,200 Israeli victims, with more people kidnapped as hostages, a small number of whom remain in Hamas captivity to this day. 251 people were kidnapped, including participants in a border music festival. The hostages were beaten, tortured, killed, and the women, as is custom, were raped. Some of the kidnapped returned home as part of prisoner exchanges, but the fate of the hostages, still held by Hamas, is unknown. Many families are mourning the victims today. Like the mother of this young woman, who was counting down the days to her wedding with her fiancé, but their plans were cut short by Palestinian terrorists.
Supposed to get married on February the 14th, Valentine Day, and both of the family decide, because actually they found together and they brought us them together. The fuel will be together. We will not separate them. So we decide to make together the fuel, and also they were buried next to each other because they were never separated. So we can't separate them.
Hamas bears full responsibility for the attack. Palestinian terrorists who don't hesitate to use their own citizens as human shields.
Systematycznie narastają.
Tensions are growing between Hamas and Israel, and Hamas is forming increasingly complex military structures. The Palestinian crime has reignited the decades-long conflict in the Middle East. Israel responded with bloody retaliation in the Gaza Strip, razing large areas of enemy territory to the ground and killing tens of thousands of people, including civilians, although Tel Aviv insists that this is an operation directed against terrorists. The only hope for peace is U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal. The American leader is demanding that both sides immediately stop the bloodshed and begin peace negotiations. Hamas and Tel Aviv have partially accepted Trump's peace plan. There is pressure on Hamas to release all hostages, which are their main bargaining chip, as well as to disarm and demilitarize, which obliges Israel to withdraw completely from Gaza, and to release all Palestinian prisoners and hostages, which is also a concession on Israel's part. The key here was Trump's more spread out, long-term play to win over allies among Arab countries. The participation of Arab countries that want to take on some responsibility for Gaza is crucial here. Mutual hatred will lead nowhere. Too much evil has already been done. Little Abigail will never get her parents back. She has her memories, but she needs peace to go on living.